Welcome to the Asbestos Knowledge Empire.
What does asbestos management mean to you?
I used to really struggle with the asbestos management at my site, but now it's a breeze.
It used to be really expensive. I was paying loads, but now I've got my asbestos power team in place. It's so much easier.
Asbestos can be a pain in the arse if not handled right.
We had to stop the job because asbestos was discovered. Now we don't have that problem.
Asbestos management is easier than you think. Asbestos management. Be proactive, not reactive. Think about asbestos first, not last.
And now your hosts, best-selling authors and asbestos experts, Ian Stone and Neil Munro.
Welcome to Asbestos Knowledge Empire. My name's Neil Munro.
And I'm Ian Stone.
So today we're talking about, can you actually have asbestos removal works carried out in an occupied office?
No. Right, thanks for listening. No. Okay. Yeah. No, that is a very good question because... Yeah, can you have works done with people sitting next to it and all the rest of it? And, well, it's a difficult one, really, because it depends on the office, for a start, how big it is, how many people are there, the type of asbestos works that are needed.
Yeah. And it is really important to consider this, isn't it? Because lots of people will be looking at asbestos removal works and thinking it's expensive, it's going to cost a lot. But equally, if they've got to shut down, that's an even bigger cost, isn't it? If you stop operations... you're not earning money, are you? No. So, yeah, it's all that to take into account. But I suppose the biggest question is it depends on what it is and what's going to happen, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. If it's a small repair to, I don't know, some texture coating on the ceiling, could that be done? Well, yeah, because you could get the operatives in early, the repair carried out, the air monitoring carried out before people come into work. So if it's something small and simple, definitely that can happen. Obviously, everything needs to be risk assessed and there needs to be a good demarcated area so that the work's carried out safely. The air monitoring needs to be carried out to prove that everything's been carried out to a satisfactory manner. But when you take to kind of wholesale removal, if it was a ceiling that needed to be removed or something like that, that's a completely different ballgame because you can't just complete that within a couple of hours, sort of early morning before office staff come in.
Yeah, I suppose it depends on kind of the layout of the building and the occupation of the building to see. Obviously, if you're undertaking licensed works where you've got an enclosure, like Ian said, that's not an up and down in a day usually, is it?
No.
Very simple enclosures can be done in a day, but you're talking minor panels or something like that, aren't you? Something
really small works.
Simple. The most important thing is obviously preventing anyone being exposed to asbestos while the work's carrying out.
Yeah.
And it's having that ample space and kind of a buffer, really, isn't it? For if something does go wrong or something does get breached or there's an issue or something like hasn't been planned for could crop up, couldn't it? For instance, if you're taking down ceilings, sometimes you don't know what's above that ceiling and you don't know where that ceiling opens out to. So you really have got to take in the precautions of the unknown factors and have that kind of that ample buffer zone surrounding the works.
Well, that's it. And you're totally right depends on the size. So if you think of a small little industrial estate unit office, well, there's no hope in hell that you're going to be able to do removal in there because the office is a small, tiny little office. Yeah. Whereas if you think of a large high-rise office in London, you've got floors that are like 1,000 square metres. And in there, could you, like you said, move people, shift them and demarcate an area? Yeah, you could. You could take over half a floor. You can create hoarding and hoard the actual office off into. You could create an actual barrier, a full seal barrier, before you've even created the asbestos barrier, if you like. So you're incorporating that barrier from people and you then create the buffer zone within that area to do what you need to do and do the asbestos removals. But again, it's a lot of planning that needs to be considered. Can you move everybody and shift everybody to work on another floor, or can you squeeze everybody in on that floor? Obviously, at the moment, under COVID, that's a very difficult thing to consider and to do. Other implications as well that we've kind of dealt with in the past are IT implications. What does that actually mean? It's not a case of just picking so-and-so's computer up and moving that whole team over because, well, they need to still get on the network. There's issues around network cabling, where the access points are, power for people. So it can be done, but there are a lot of considerations to be kind of taken into account.
Yeah, I think the ideal situation is where you're talking about asbestos removal works is the clearer, the most unoccupied that it can be is the ideal solution, isn't it?
Definitely. If it's just the asbestos workers on that site, that location, that area, it's better for all parties because it stops a lot of the other risks being associated with works.
Usually that means that the asbestos removal works can be done quicker. It's more straightforward. Like you said, there's less people with the potential to be exposed, and there's less people asking questions. There's less people, trying to raise concerns. Am I safe? Because that's another thing. As soon as people see asbestos removal works, they get scared.
Men in spacesuits, we're
and
referred to.
Exactly that. It's those questions to go, oh, there's a bit of polythene there.
Yeah.
And they're all in masks.
They're all in masks, literally like...
Darth Vader.
50 metres away from me. And they're safe because of that. And you what? You want me to sit here?
On my computer.
Yeah. And rightly so, because if you don't know how asbestos removal works happen and the reason why we have those things in place and you don't need them outside that area, like rightly so, everybody should question it because it would look scary. And that's why, yeah, like I say, the term of men in spacesuits always comes about when you're talking about asbestos removal works.
Yeah. Generally speaking, that will be the most cost efficient way of doing the asbestos works. Mm-hmm. If they've got a clear run, unoccupied, they can just get in, do their job and get out. That's usually the cost-effective way of the asbestos removal. But obviously you need to weigh up, is that cost-effective for you to then obviously run your business and whatever you've got to do after that? It's kind of weighing that up.
It is. I mean, ultimately, that's the thing, right? It's like, can things be done? Yes, of course. There's always a way around issues and problems and risks that you may face. And it just needs careful planning and consideration. Are some things more expensive than others? Yeah. Will other things take longer than others? Yes. But it just depends on your situation and where you're at and what needs doing. But like I say, there's not kind of a one cap fits all scenario for that.
Yeah. And that's why I think it's important to kind of get an independent consultant on board when you are kind of thinking about these works, as versus to having just a removal contractor, because the removal contract will kind of always look at the works itself and what's the kind of the easiest scenario for them.
Easiest, quickest way I can get this asbestos out and make most money doing it. That's how an asbestos removal contractor looks at the project, whereas a independent consultant will look at it with a more kind of level-headed view, so to speak. They should have a conversation with you, and the points that we've raised, these should be points of up for discussion of all, why are we needing to do it? How are we going to go about it? How does this affect the business? What does your good look like? What does the end goal look like to you? And then when you've got the answers to those questions, you can then take a step back, prepare a specification around those works so that everything that you've discussed and planned for can be carried out and adhered to, rather than, like you say, yeah, I can remove that for you. I'm going to do it this way. This is how much it's going to cost. Because it's a closed conversation. And asbestos works isn't a closed conversation. Well, it's a closed conversation from the point of how the works are going to be done, which rightly so, the asbestos contractor should be leading that conversation. But taking a step back from that, it should be an open conversation of what does it actually look like and what does it actually mean to you to have this works done? And how are things going to get affected? And it's more of an ethereal type conversation that happens to make sure that everything is catered for, allowed for, and it does end up being the right way, because the crash bang wallop effect of getting it removed the quickest, shortest, easiest way that you're sold on by a removal contractor perhaps actually isn't the right way for you and for your business. Because like you said earlier, the fact that you might have to decant an office, yeah, the removal cost might only cost 50 grand. However, the decanting of that office, when you weigh it up, that means you lose 200 grand. Well, that's not the right way to go about it. And that needs to be thought of and incorporated within that process.
Okay, well, I hope you found that useful. And remember, asbestos first, not last.